Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the brand new Let's Eat Grandma album. I'm all ears. Let's Eat Grandma is a UK-based music duo consisting of childhood friends Rosa Walton and Jenny Hollingworth. They've been making music under the name for about 5 years now. It was in 2016 when they released their debut album, I, Gemini, which was a rough but whimsical art pop album with some experimental, psychedelic, and folky tendencies. Some interesting points of reference for the song topics on this album as well, like weird inside jokes, and there's legit a song on here that's pretty much a narrative twist of the classic Rapunzel fairy tale. You might find some stylistic similarities between this record and maybe Joanna Newsom or the early years of Animal Collective. Really any number of experimental folk or pop artists who have cropped up since the 2000s. But even at this very early stage in their artistic career, Jenny and Rosa had a pretty enigmatic sound. Very otherworldly, mystical, and pretty. But as far as the new LP over here is concerned, I'm not sure how much familiarity one might need with that debut album to really kind of get into this, because the duo undergoes a pretty significant musical shift on this new project. While Gemini had its share of synths and electronics on it, the duo goes full synth pop on this new release over here. And they do a pretty good job of keeping in touch with their experimental and progressive roots while delivering some stronger hooks and brighter instrumentals. The songs are a lot more direct this time around, with a few notable exceptions. The songs Cool and Collected and also Donnie Darko, which in my opinion might be two of the weakest songs on the album as well. They're also the two longest songs on the album, 9 and 11 minutes respectively, accounting for over a third of the album's runtime. The former is this sprawling, electric piece of psychedelic folk rock with very passionate harmonized vocals, occasionally some awkward but sparkly guitar work. The song tediously builds up to this very dramatic, arena-sized indie rock finish. It's a somewhat flaccid crescendo. The instrumental is really too sanitary to build up the intensity that I think this finish needed for the length at which the song lasts. Donnie Darko is much more lush by comparison, much more instrumentation, density, and synths. There are lots of dancey chords played throughout the track, pulsating percussion.
Eventually,
the duo introduces this dense, maximal wall of instrumentation that sounds like it's been pulled out of a Dan Deacon composition, but with some very confident spoken word vocals that kind of finish the track off in a very epic fashion. There's some great moments on this track, and generally I wouldn't say either of these two songs are awful. I just think they could have made their intended point in a much shorter span of time. Also, I feel like these two songs are indicative of this album's overall lack of stylistic focus, because musically and conceptually, this album is just so all over the place and not in the best way. The song Ava, coming completely out of nowhere, is like one of those sparse, super frank piano ballads that's incredibly assuring, essentially telling the listener, it's all gonna be okay. You'll get through it. The song Snakes and Ladders is a heart-wrenching guitar ballad in 3/4. The initial moments kind of sound like a dejected 90s sad sack rock tune, but eventually the track grows into this trippy synthetic flourish with clanging bells and lots of thick distortion. I love the linear progression of the track. It's got a great pace, and overall it's one of the few songs on here that feels like it has a direct stylistic connection to the material that Let's Eat Grandma used to release. Because a lot of the other songs on this album feel less like they're in that experimental psychedelic folk vein and instead are geared toward, I don't know, like a Churches or an M83 fan. The reserved but emotionally shaking lead vocals and the driving dance beats and the piano intervals on the track I'll Be Waiting sound like lovers of Purity Ring would really be into them too. But while Let's Eat Grandma shares quite a few similarities on this record with the duos and trios and quattros of modern synth-pop acts, I do think they approach this trend, this genre, with better production, more interesting instrumental layers, better tunes, better vocals. They're not quite as soulless and squeaky clean. The song It's Not Just Me and Falling Into Me are in a similar synth-pop vein to that song and are equally good, catchy, and sweet. The problem is the great ideas on this record don't seem like they have a lot of overall focus as an album. For example, take the song Whitewater, the intro to the album. Immaculately produced. Love the synths on this track, love the strings worked into the instrumental too. It is a gargantuan start to this record. It sounds like a big budget soundtrack chunk for a huge sci-fi movie, but The tone of this track does not really match that of any other song on this thing. Again, amazing intro, feels intergalactic, but what it adds to the tone or the theme, if there is one, of the album in general, I have no idea. The song Hot Pink, another track on here that I love. Super zany, cutting-edge pop production, total banger. Clearly the beat on this thing is borrowed from or is in direct reference to the PC music camp, as a lot of the vocal samples, the bass, some of the skittery metallic percussion sampled in different pitches throughout the beat on this thing sounds like it could have been lifted from a Sophie track or a Girlfriend of the Year track. I love the industrial tone of the instrumental, the thumping drums, the cute synth breakdown, and the cheeky hot pink refrain shouted in two vocals at the same time. There's some great songs on this thing. There are a lot of great ideas on this thing. There's some great production on this thing too. The singing is pretty quality as well. Let's Eat Grandma brings a lot of personality. They take a lot of risks too, but this album is just so disjointed as a singular listening experience. It just feels like miscellany. It feels like a hodgepodge of a record. Even if a lot of the material on here individually in a vacuum sounds very good, it just does very little to reinforce itself as an entire record at the end of the day. Hopefully Let's Eat Grandma's next album just has a bit more direction, focus, and purpose. And I'm not necessarily saying that they need to choose between one music style or another and just kind of go cold turkey on certain sounds, or that future releases need to be stylistically black and white. It would just be better if in the future they found a way to kind of make all of these genres and styles live in harmony, either on the same song or find a way to effectively segue from one idea to the next and just have it all add up. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this album. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Let's Eat Grandma forever.